Howdy, everyone. I've been working on fitting this forward frame, this forward canopy frame and skin assembly to the fuselage. I've had a bunch of, or I shouldn't say a bunch, but I've had some videos documenting what I've been working on, but it's become really disjointed and kind of convoluted. So I'm starting over from scratch, and hopefully this will be a better video, or the videos coming up will be a little bit better and easier to understand. So I've decided to kind of tackle this the way that I tackle everything else. I use the written instructions and, of course, the prints as a guide, but I kind of like to do things that make sense in my mind and work through things that more kind of real world on the airplane. So that's kind of how I'm tackling it. So I may not be following the written instructions exactly and following steps in order, but the way that I'm going to show you here is the way that I'm working through it, and it makes the most sense to me. So first things first, if you can imagine this top skin in place, I have gone through and I've deburred and edge finished and match drilled everything. Everything has been dimpled. This substructure has been all dimpled, and the skin itself that lays on top has been dimpled. When you do your initial fit, you want to have this skin in place because it will pull this structure into alignment, especially areas like this where you have your aluminum spacer and you have your aluminum blocks in here. You don't want to leave this loose so things can move around, okay? You want to have this skin completely installed the way it's going to be installed with everything clecoed. So this structure will be correct and in alignment. The next thing you do then, or at least what I've done, I went ahead and clecoed the canopy frame and skin the way that you see it here. Now this skin comes pre-drilled. You can see here are a couple of holes here. Just like always, the majority of the holes on this skin, if not all of them, are pre-punched. The frame underneath is also pre-punched in certain locations. And by that, I mean these clecos that you see in place are the only holes that are pre-punched in the underlying structure. So these holes that you see here, these few here, and the ones that run all the way across here, those particular holes are not pre-punched in the frame. Now the written instructions have you go ahead and match drill these to the frame right off the bat. I'm not comfortable with that quite yet, so I haven't done that. The only thing that I've clecoed is the skin to the frame where the skin and the frame are already pre-punched. These other holes that are not pre-punched, I'm not worried about those quite yet. So I've got the frame, of course, clecoed to the skin. You can see I've got some protective tape on my fuselage on both sides. The edges of this skin under here, and especially these front corners, I've even got a little bit of tape just on the corner. These will tear up the aluminum on your fuselage. So protect it as best you can. So again, with this skin in place, this in place, or I mean the skin, the skin clecoed to the frame, you can do your initial fit and see how this fits in relation to this skin. Now, the first thing that I had noticed was I had a hard time getting the hinge hook, if that's what you want to call it, slid into the gap here between the blocks on both sides. It was hard to get in, and it was a tight fit. So what I did was I had pulled these blocks out and I chamfered the forward corner, and I'll show you that when I take this off. I'll explain this stuff in more detail. But this block here, the corner going all the way down, I chamfered that, and then I did the same thing on this block, this forward corner here from top to bottom. I chamfered it, and that allowed the hook from this frame to slip in kind of nice. So that's one thing that I had done. The other thing that I'll have to show you when I get this taken off is there's some interference between some welds and some other things between the skin and the frame that you need to take care of. But I'll show you those in a moment. So the other thing that I had noticed, again, when I had this top skin on, I couldn't bring this skin up far enough to close this gap. The gap between this skin and this skin, I couldn't get that gap closed enough because, again, these hinge hooks that are part of this assembly, these were running up and butting up against the aluminum stop here. So I had to take both of these aluminum stops off and shave off a little bit so that this hook then had more room to come forward. So I took, I'm going to say a little bit more than a 16th, but not quite an eighth off of each spacer. So now the hooks can slide forward and close up this gap. And of course I had taken the skin off to do that because it was just a lot easier to get to these with this skin off. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is a lot of people will have the skin on and they try to mate this to the skin, which is absolutely fine. However, with this forward skin off, you can see really clearly how this skin lays with all of this structure in here. So you can see, of course, this is just laying freely right now, but you can see where it fits kind of nice, and then there's a gap, and then there's an even bigger gap, and then it starts to kind of close up a little bit and fit nicer. You can see all that here. This skin rests on these ears, just like this skin does. So this forward skin and this skin share all of these flanges. So if you can get this to lay nice on the flanges, this other skin here will also lay nice on the flanges. And you shouldn't have any kind of a gap between the two. So that's what I'm going to work on now. It's a lot of fooling around. You've got to put this thing on and off and on and off and, potentially take this skin on and off and work through it. But I'm getting there. I just want to point out some things that were very clear and very obvious right off the bat. Chamfer in the corners of these blocks so you can at least get the canopy slit or the canopy frame slid into position. And you may have to trim down the width of these aluminum spacers so the hooks can slide forward enough to close the gap between the two skins. Now you can also start looking at how this skin lays with this existing frame, and you can check for anything that might interfere. You can see there's a gap here, but it looks like it's really tight here in the corners, so maybe I can relieve these corners a little bit. Maybe I can put a little bit of a bend on this tab to close that gap. There's a little bit of interference down in here, so I'm going to file the corner of the structure right in here, so this will lay a little nicer. Things of that nature. Just go over this with a fine-tooth comb and make very small adjustments. You can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it looks like this flange here is sitting up a little bit higher than this flange. So I can maybe tweak that a little bit to get this to lay a little nicer. That's kind of what I'm working on now. Before I get too deep into that, I'm going to pull this off and I'll show you some other things that need to be handled right off the bat before you get too far into fitting everything together. Let me get this off and I'll talk about that.